Alrighty, friends, family, and of course the seething freaks that stalk me from Twitter, dysgenic freaks at that. Welcome to Marchese Methods, where we talk about how to get your eyes on the prize, meaning that you sift through the nonsense, you sift through these things that are kind of copes and excuses, and you really dive into having an idea of what that prize is, which is an end state of happiness and fulfillment, and whatever form that takes specifically for you. That doesn't get used as an excuse, though, and how to find your fulfillment, how to get there. So, in conjunction with that, today's topic is that fitness is not 80% diet, 20% training, despite that being the like ultimate truth nuke, red pill of the fitness world that's peddled online. We're going to debunk that because it's gay and it's fake, and of course, it's a cope excuse. So, let me see. Any updates? Any fun updates? On Saturday, I'm going to do a space with some of my friends from Twitter. Not everyone from Twitter is a dysgenic freak. I have quite a few friends there now. I'm doing like the online kid thing. It's like when I was 14, I actually hung out with people a lot and everything when I was a teenager. And then there were some teenagers who were like always online. Now it's the reverse. Now I'm making friends online all the time. So anyway, it's cool. We got a couple buddies from New Zealand, even a Russian friend from all across the United States. So it'll be fun. It'll be good. It'll be a little bit less censored because it is Twitter, and Twitter's kind of just like really politics, and then everything still falls into like one of three categories with that. Even like health and fitness, that's like like fascist now or something. So that's the fun. I am enrolled now officially in the clinical mental health counseling program. That's very exciting. So that's how Marchese Methods is going to develop. Because life coach, that makes sense and everything with the discipline, but I really want to drill down to the major point to this, that a lot of this is like that psychodynamic mental stuff, and really all about how to conquer your mind and use your mind to make the world yours. The world really does belong to you, and there's a million different ways that you could do things. So those are the updates. Loyal friends, you've probably already done this. New loyal friends, you know what to do. If you are a Marchese Methods loyal soldier, you are going to like and subscribe and follow, even if it means you have to make an account. I know that my old internet activity was actually always I refused to make an account on anything. I refused to engage because I thought it's just like, well, why would I do that? But if you're my friend, that's why you would do that. Okay, so that's the fun in that. So, all right, so fitness is 80%. Fitness, let me do the voice. Fitness is 80% diet, 20% training. Cool guy face, stupid TikTok edit and artisanal fucking cooking and gay wine or whatever. Not wine, they don't really do that, but gay protein cookies or something. So now a lot of the stuff that I'm doing here is debunked. So why do you suppose that is? Well, because realistically, in theory, all of the fitness information is out there. As a matter of fact, a lot of true information is still out there. I told the story of how I started with weightlifting, and it was as simple as going to bodybuilding.com. They had a diagram of a guy and a girl and, labels for each muscles. And I was like, I want that muscle to be bigger. So I clicked, and then it just had a list of exercises, and you could, filter by what's most popular, what's most highly rated, the good old days of bodybuilding.com. That's still there. You could check out my other video on how I started and kept lifting, and the link is there either in this description or something, or I have a screen recording so you see my activity. It's just bodybuilding.com/exercise database or something like that. So anyway, so true information is all out there, yet nobody's fucking in shape. This is still a huge problem. This is still the real pandemic. I was always saying to people during the pandemic, oh, okay, well, that's crazy, because this number, that number, what's the biggest killer in the United States? Obesity-related illnesses. What's more, it's even like a psychology problem too, because people are forever seething and complaining that they don't have an idealized physique, So even if you're not obese and you're mediocre, it's still like, it like really, really messes with people's minds to not be there. So you would think the answer is, okay, I'm just going to do what it fucking takes and do it. But this is still a problem, despite everyone knowing that fitness is 80% diet, 20% training. You would think that, okay, all right, problem solved. There's the answer. There's the equation. I'm going to do it, and I'm going to live by that, however you would live by that, right? And we'll get into that. So it's not. The reality is, the problem is that most of the information is false, because most of the information is dressed up as an epic truth nuke, right? The way that they say it. Fitness is 80%. It's always like a cool guy too. It's always dressed up as some sort of epic truth nuke, and people buy into that, and then they apply it, and then it doesn't work. And the reality is because it's not a fucking truth nuke. Not only is it false, but it very carefully develops this whole psychodynamic of just an elaborate, sophisticated cope excuse to just fuck off and be lazy and bullshit and fuck around, not do anything, indulge, and all of that. And fundamentally, that's because most people's value system is either non-existent or completely structured and revolutionary around just fucking dopamine maxing. And that doesn't mean take what I say with this and don't turn that into evaluating, getting neurotic about every last little decision you make. But just be aware of these sorts of things, and especially when it's an elaborate thing like that. I mean, does that even sound like it makes sense? 80% diet, 20% training, according to who and or fucking what? So, and I'll get into that shortly. So let's just go, but let's try to, in good faith, interpret what's going on with this myth, right? So they say it like a tough guy and everything, but if I extract from that, maybe there is some sort of truth in it. And the idea that they're trying to get across is that most people's idea of fitness is you have to, run on the treadmill endlessly, and you have to do endless cardio, and you have to endlessly eat salads and low calories or whatever. And, they are, that most people think that they have to get like super neurotic about what exercises they're doing and everything, and under what circumstance. And at least at the forefront of their conscious, they're doing a good deed of letting people know you don't have to be crazy like that. You don't have to be neurotic. You just have to be conscious of what you eat, how you eat, why you eat. And you would think that makes sense. You would think that it's like a rescue. They're rescuing everybody from the horror of making no progress, the horror of going years, uninformed and doing all that work for nothing. And there are certainly people who do think that they're like endless cardio is the answer, and like spot fat burning. They think that working out abs burns the fat on their abs, and so on and so forth. So the idea is, well, hang on, how you eat is a little bit more like significantly more heavily weighted in when factored into your overall end fitness result or something. If this is like an f of x or something, and you have x to the fourth plus 3x, this might be a little bit esoteric. X to the fourth plus 3, remember x squared, right? It's a parabola. It goes like that. It goes straight up. So if you have a function that's x to the fourth, it's even more narrow and up. And then if you say, well, let's say the fitness equation is f of x equals x to the fourth plus 3x. So what that means, it's a little bit adjusted. Man, I promise I have studied math, but some things, like, it just totally slips me. But it changes. It said, excuse me, with the 3x. It moves. It gets moved over and then scaled. Okay, so you could see that in a function like that, it's still going to mostly resemble x to the fourth. So that's what they're saying. They're saying that the way you eat and everything is the x to the fourth in the equation, and then the way you train is the 3x in that equation. The 3x isn't going to as significantly influence the behavior of the shape of it, the way it comes out in the end, as much as the x to the fourth, because it's exponential, it's growing very, very rapidly and at an increasingly rapid rate. So they kind of fancy themselves as like these sorts of myth busters. And, you know, the tough guy, the little bit of the tough guy stuff, if you notice, it's kind of off-putting because they make like they're some sort of hero. You know, they make like they've braved the battle online in the fitness industry, in the fitness industry corruption. You know, if you haven't heard that one yet, you'll hear it. You know, the fitness industry is just so corrupt. Like, wow, real hot take, bro. You know, not only is like everything corrupt, but it's just like, dude, seriously, you're still like Reddit level conspiracy theorying about everything. Okay. So their heroic sacrifice, you know, commemorate their heroic sacrifice. They braved a few years of being retarded, I guess, so that you don't have to, so that at the start of your fitness journey, you can immediately make the optimized progress, so to speak. So more than just the presentation of it, what makes it so believable, what makes people latch onto it, is because people generally are very preoccupied with food still. I'm looking at the weather here. Let me check this thing here too. People are still thoroughly preoccupied with food and its consumption and everything, and they're really preoccupied with making sure they eat. Not only, I mean, if you're undisciplined, you're preoccupied with food and its pleasure and getting off on it. And then there are people who mistake discipline. We'll get into that shortly. And they think it means they have to be neurotic about eating and everything. But the main reason this really gets traction is because it kind of speaks to this false premise in the mind, in everybody's mind. And that is that it really is some sort of challenging, difficult, agonizing task to forego pigging out, to forego dopamine, to forego freaking pizza. Oh, I was gonna work out today, but then like, pizza. Most people really think that that's a hard thing, and it's really not. It should not be. It's only hard if you think that food is fucking important and you think that that stuff is important. Your superpower in the end of the day is an indifference to food. That's the real tough guy toughness, when food doesn't have any power or jurisdiction over you. You could think of it, an analogy wherein, let's say somebody calls you a big fat meanie or something, you know, and you want to like fight them because you're mad at them. But let's say like a 5-year-old calls you like a big fat meanie. Something in you just makes you not really feel the need to react to that. Why? Because the power dynamic between you and a child is that you have the power, they don't. So when they try to say something like that, you're not going to really react the same way you do when an adult does. And we'll get into stuff like that later. That doesn't mean cope and take that as a cope excuse to never react to anything. You do need to stand up for yourself in many cases, but that's just an example to elucidate the dynamic, elucidate what it really means to have power over food. And that is that food doesn't have any power, so you don't consider it some sort of monumental task to forego it. So, you know, and there's a layer to it too, where it's like they get it and you don't, and nobody else does, because they're like these intellectual vanguards, super informed, really sophisticated, knowing their stuff with this, and it's all meant to bolster an image. So I kind of really just went into criticizing it, but their main idea there is that, you know, food is more heavily weighted towards your end physique, your end results, your end health status, homeostasis, I suppose, than lifting weights. It's a function of, you know, the f of x, and it's the exponential term, not the linear term. Talking shit about being esoteric, and then I like fucking say dumb shit like that. I mean, most people, I suspect my audience is pretty high IQ, so everyone's gonna get it or know what that means, even if you're, you know, rusty on your math. But, You know, some people like really, really forget that stuff. That's nothing against you actually. And as a matter of fact, I fucking hate math now that I'm in grad school. So I think I've told that story a little bit, so I'll skip that. But so all that's meant to say, don't feel bad if you didn't get the math analogy. All right, so let's I'll go into the psychodynamics, but let's directly address what they're really claiming there at the forefront of their conscious, what they think that they're doing and saying. So, you know, let's just start with what I asked earlier. According to fucking who and or what? Every time I heard this, you know, 80% diet, 20% trading. According to fucking who? And that's not to Reddit, and that's not to Reddit mode. Do you have data to back that up? Do you have a study to back that up? That's not to do that. I hate that. I hate empiricism because it's fake. It's a pseudo intellectual. Excuse me. Try to be a little polite here, not belch. So, not to even Reddit, but what's even the rationale? What's even the claim here? What logic are we applying here? How does this deduce? If A equals B and B equals C and A equals C, that's an argument that I would be willing to entertain, but I can't even see that. And nobody ever explains it. But even me just trying to be like, because everyone's retarded, so let me figure it out myself or ask a friend or something. And there doesn't appear to be any sort of deductive rationale to this. So where does it really come from? Well, firstly, even that idea, well, the numerics of that really just comes from the fucking economic Pareto principle, okay? The economic Pareto principle states that 80% of your revenue is guaranteed by 20% of your customers. So in other words, if you own Home Depot or something, let's say the contractor guys or the real estate, mogul types, or the construction project types, they're going to be there. They're going to buy a lot of stuff, and they're going to buy a lot because they're doing multiple projects, multiple houses. So they're really primarily responsible for all the revenue at Home Depot. 20% of the customers are buying 80% of the stuff. And so, mouth keeps drying out here. And so, what does that really get at? What does that hint? And by the way, that is relatively true. It's not always exactly 80-20, but that is relatively prominent and true. Another version of that is 80% of your sales is from 20% of your inventory. So you might find in a store like Home Depot, like whatever common shit. I'm revealing myself to be a fucking pussy because I'm not too familiar with that sort of thing. But I don't know, maybe nails or something, like nails, little whatever. Maybe at Staples, what's bought most is like pens or something, right? So pens and those little types of items. It's not always little in physicality, but it is things that get purchased the most amongst all of your inventory. So that provides a little bit of insight, right? So one of the little projects I did is, I should wrap this part up. This is getting a little ridiculous, but one of the projects I did was basically in a warehouse. It was mostly gaskets that were bought and ordered. So we placed them closer to the front so that when people were, picking items off the shelves for orders, that, they wouldn't have to walk as far to go get that. It would be crazy to start them here and then have all the gaskets way back. So you put them a little closer. So that's just one of the ways that it uses insight. So it says something a little bit profound. And behaviorally, that tells you about decision making, that tells you about products, that tells you about, people's focus and everything. But how the fuck does that translate to fitness? How the fuck does that translate to the biophysiology of when you work out and when you eat and everything? And somebody might say, oh, well, it's not. They might try to say that 80% of the discipline is concentrated in the eating or in the kitchen or whatever, abdomen in the kitchen. But that's not really where the focus of the discipline is, because if that is, people would be doing that or successfully doing that or implementing that and then getting the idealized physique that they want. So how would this even translate into fitness? What would you even say? I can't even come up with like a good like bullshit answer. It's so ridiculous. How and why? What would, if the economic Pareto principle tells you about people's decision making, how does people's decision making when consuming goods translate to their decision making when consuming their fitness time, consuming their disciplinary resources, like the resource of cognition in their mind? Like, and don't get me wrong, I like metaizing stuff like that, but you could see that there's not really a real translation here. So that starts us down the path of really thinking about it a little bit more. And I have, exercise. I like the little call outs in my notes here, but exercise, right? So give it a try. Exercise this. Exercises and try it out. Give it a try. Ask somebody to elucidate why and how this is true. And they might not even know they got it from the Pareto principle, because people try to apply the fucking Pareto principle to like everything now. And it's like, really, that's demonstrably true of a lot of things in economics. Nowhere has that been demonstrated elsewhere. Well, don't quote me on that, because some idiot is going to find something. Excuse me. So now my other criticism of this is, you don't even know what the fuck you're talking about, these people who say this. It really is, it's very clear, without being too deep into psychology, it's very clear that most people just fucking say this because all the other sheep are ba-ah-ing it. All the others, one sheep goes ba, so they all go ba. That's really what it fucking is. They just hear it and they just repeat it. Total NPC, programmed fucking robot, mammal brain trying to fit in, trying to be a part of the cool fitness kids club. So I'm just going to fucking say whatever they say. And by extension, that makes me fit, right? If I'm saying that stuff, I know what I'm talking about. And if I know what I'm talking about, it must be because I know how to do fitness. And if I know how to do fitness, that must mean I have the look and I have the idolized physique and I look good, right? They try to like fucking reverse engineer it. And so I think part of it too, well, I shouldn't say I think I know, because I know everything. No, I'm just kidding. Is people also get a little like hit of like dopamine just from saying two fucking numbers that fit nicely together. 80-20, 80-20. Because those two numbers fit together to make 100, people just fucking say it and catch on to it and think it's correct. Because it's 80 plus 20 equals 100. 80% plus 20% equals 100%. And their brains just like fucking lock on to that, like total fucking dweeb, fucking peanut, whatever that would be. I guess lizard brain or something, but not to just overuse that. All right. So, and people also get this faith and this confidence, just like in this from the 75 hard. They get this faith and this confidence from like some six-pack idiot online saying this. They say it with the bravado, so it lights people up and makes them feel good, so it must be true. And well, that guy's fit, so that lends credibility to whatever he says about this, and reasonably, a little bit reasonable. But what's more important is that people figure it's credible that he said it, so that must, and then what they don't understand is that doesn't mean that their interpretation of what that's saying is credible. But they skip that part. They say, well, that's credible. Fitness is 80-20. And then they take their interpretation and they abuse that to suggest that their interpretation is, man, I'm stumbling on my words here, huh? That their interpretation is credible. So with 80-20, what does this really become? It becomes, he said fitness is 80% diet, 20% training. So what I should do is I should make nice good foods in the kitchen and then work out 3 times a week, and then I'll be fit. Yes. It's also tiresome. I'm gonna look like him if I make gay dinners and work out 3 times a week, and I'm gonna look exactly like this guy, this fitness guru guy that's huge, or this fitness guru girl that's got the big ass. He said it's 80-20. Look, I'm doing what this guy said. I'm doing what he said, so I'm eating all these meals and only working out twice a week because that's what he said. I mean, 80-20, that's what that means. So that was kind of the main point of the 75, or one of the main points of the 75 hard. So I won't go too deep into that. You can check out my 75 hard video on that. 75 hard is easy to really dive a little bit more deeply into that. But that's the main premise of that part. All right, so now you might think, just like how we talked about, all the information's out there, yet everyone's still obese, everyone's still mediocre and crying that they don't look good, and the only way that people do look good is if they have too much time on their hands and their steroids and blah blah blah, their genetics. So why does this myth persist? Well, I have my stuff mixed up here, so I'll get into that shortly. So let's just pause for a moment and let's dissect it a little bit further. In that, what does fitness mean here? We've talked about this plenty of times, but once again, let's make sure we understand this. Fitness is 80% diet and 20% training. Yeah, you know what, bro? Fitness is actually 80% diet, 20% training. Well, what does fitness mean here? Because fitness sure is 80% diet, 20% training, under the circumstance that your idea of fitness is being a fucking slightly not flabby, mediocre physiqued person with like still a gut. Fitness sure is 80% diet, 20% training in that case, because that's what that fucking gets you. Once again, we have this. Fitness is this. Fitness is that. This is how you get fit. And what they're calling fit is not what you're picturing. You're picturing a sexed up, idealized Instagram physique. You're picturing that's not a, like, people say this stupid bullshit about, social media inflating your expectations. No, look at me. I have what a lot of people consider, I mean, I shouldn't be too humble. Okay, I have an idealized physique. There are guys that look way better than me and so on and so forth, but people are picturing me or better. They're not picturing scrawny version of me, and that's it. So there's that difference again, that fitness is being said one way, but interpreted another way. Fitness sure is 80% diet. Yeah. Oh, to be healthy, you just have to walk 3 times a week for 20 minutes each time. Sure. If what health means to you being a fucking mediocre joke, and if what health means to you is, like, according to the fucking doctor's bullshit, huge range for testosterone levels and huge range for, like, cardiorespiratory health, it's like total fucking low levels they'll call fit or healthy. So clearly, anything that comes out of, like, whatever you want to call it, I guess mainstream, doesn't add up and doesn't make sense because it's tailored to, like, the bullshit definition of fitness. And some people might say, sure, well, that's great and all, but for me, I'd like to be a mediocre physique. It's better than being not, where I'm at right now. I'll get into that shortly. So now let's think about the sexed up physique, the idealized physique, the big ass squat girl and the gym bro. They're doing a lot more eating than the average person. And in some cases, they're eating as much as obese people, but that's really like more so bodybuilders. So, but we'll say there's a bodybuilder out there somewhere. There's somebody who looks way different than you, eating the same amount, even eating the same way. and they look like almost like me, or maybe just like me, or maybe even better. So how could we say that fitness is 80% diet, 20% training, when there are people for whom it seems more so that fitness is actually 80% training, 20% diet? Now, don't take that and run with it and abuse it as a cope excuse to say, oh, well, it's only 20% diet, so I could just pig out. That's not what that means. But what that does mean is, and I'm not doing the low IQ thing of like, well, there are some people for whom, no, there's a significant number of people for whom this is like total fucking bullshit. As a matter of fact, anybody who wants a sexed up physique, this is total bullshit. That's really the key layer here, is that if you want fitness in terms of being that fucking person, this is a crock of shit. This is the biggest crock of shit. And this is the biggest cope excuse to not work out. You know, fitness sure is 80% diet, 20% training. This is my tweet here. Fitness sure is 80% diet, 20% training if you're only giving 20% on your fucking training. Fitness sure is 80% diet, 20% training if you're fucking half-ass bullshitting for 20 to 40 minutes at most 3 times a week, fucking slamming 600 milligrams of caffeine. You know. Fitness sure is 80% diet because your training is fucking garbage bullshit and your training is lackluster and insufficient. So yeah, where you're at that moment is your diet is going to heavily influence how your end physique is. And that's not to say go sway completely the other way, because you do have to be conscious of how you eat and don't, you really shouldn't be indulgent just for the sake of being indulgent is wrong and gross and degenerate. It's not even about fitness in some cases. How about you just value self-control in and of itself? How about you just value things beyond fucking food? How about you value effort? How about you value the care and respect for your body? So anyway, that's rant. Excuse me, my throat is itchy. So, all right, let me double check my notes here. Brain running out here. Let's see, 30 minutes. Oh yeah, I can't help myself. I got to go on all the time. All right, so, all right, I said all of that. So, let's get to the copes. So you might say, well, but it's better, being mediocre is better than what I am right now, because a lot of people who are like very overweight have this idea, like for them, it's not anything other than get skinny, get like skinny. Something in there like triggers that. And I think it's just because like that's a different version of being unhealthy and ridiculed and everything, where it's always just you're fat, you're fat, you're fat, you're fat, you're fat. So these people really more so are just concerned with not fat, which means just like skinny. So people will say, well, I just want to be heckin' skinny. And first of all, why? Why would you want that? Just to relieve yourself of the like childhood trauma of getting bullied for being fat or something? That's handing over your life still to those bullies. You are still subordinate to them. You are still affected by them. So you got to resolve that. That's like a psychology issue. And that's a fundamental flaw in that you don't care about health and fitness. You just care about appearance, and specifically you care about fulfilling this trauma, fulfilling this manufacturing a defense against this trauma, against these people or against people in the future. And well, what's wrong with that? Well, what's wrong with that is, firstly, you're totally just like preoccupied with something that has nothing to do with this. And you're preoccupied with something that's just not good for you to fucking be preoccupied with. You know, everyone gets like insulted, like, and you should stand up for yourself and everything. But on some level, if you have this strange attachment to this image of being like the fat kid or something, You have to resolve, you're not going to resolve that by just getting heckin' skinny, especially because once you do, somebody could call you fat and you'll still be affected by it, even though if you're obviously not fat. So aside from that, there's a practical error in this, in that if you just want to be, even just that phraseology there, just want to be something, that just has an implication there. That firstly, that you're lowering your standards. I just want, you've lowered your standards to be beneath what you actually want. You've tried to convince yourself that you want less than what you actually want and you do that in favor of the, less energy output and less effort and less work and less commitment. So that's the first part. The second part is if you are operating on, I just want to be skinny. Well, what does it take to be skinny? So not actually much. It doesn't take the same as it takes to be sexed up. So what winds up happening is the change you have to make is actually much less significant. And you might think, well, that's great. It might be easier to cross over that, get my foot in the door with that way and everything. But what actually happens is because the change is so insignificant, you'll feel like the stakes are lower. So for example, if you don't work out at all, and then you want to work out once or twice a week to get just skinny, because it's so low investment and because it's so low risk and the stakes are much lower, you're actually going to feel less compelled and less inclined to keep up with it. You're not going to develop the discipline because every time something gets in the way, you're going to be like, well, it's no big deal if I miss it because I just, what you want doesn't take all that much, and therefore is less affected by, one skipped day versus if you want to be a sexed up bro, one skipped day could be a disaster. So because it's not disastrous and because the implications of skipping or fucking off and all of that are nowhere near as drastic or significant as that stuff when you're trying to be a sexed up freak beast, so you wind up not doing it at all. You wind up just fucking staying mediocre and half-ass, and in some cases you just completely neglect it altogether. And I just want to be skinny because there's a sexual component to that where people think that just being skinny is enough to get them their precious fucking PP and VV. Not only is that not enough because of what chances are the attractive person you want is significantly more attractive than that and is thus going to want you to be significantly more attractive than that. But this idea that on the other end of that is some sort of relief, some sort of, oh, okay, well, if I do that and then I have more sex, then I'm more approved of, and that serves as empirical evidence to justify me approving myself. I'm not a man unless I get pussy, and then when I do get pussy, that serves as evidence, evidence for my case in my mind to myself as to why I'm a man. There's so much wrong with that, and you'll see plenty of that in the future. Let me not ramble. But, but that's not what happens. You still are not going to have a good opinion of yourself. You're still not going to approve of yourself. And the sexual component to it, it's still not satiating because, well, firstly, I'll say, you're not going to approve of yourself just because other people approve of you. It just, the mind just doesn't work that way. The psyche doesn't work that way. The superego, id, and ego battle does not work that way. And that's evident. That's evident in how you're even trying right now. Go ahead, get approval, and then see how you feel on the other end of it. Chances are you're still not going to, have a high opinion of yourself because you have thought patterns and pathologies that you need to resolve that are everything from childhood to internalized, attributions to you that somebody might have given and so on. So that's that part. The sexual component of it is that you're not going to be satiated with the sexual even if you're granted more access to sex, what does that do for you? And that's not even going to attract people in and of itself. I mean, for women, it kind of does, but that's not even going to attract people, women in and of itself, because there's still so much more to that. And the feeling you expect on the other end of that, the confidence or whatever, it's never going to come. You have to approve of yourself irrespective of whether or not others approve of you. If your self-approval is dependent on the approval of others, well, then it's fickle, then it's unstable. So, all right, so the second cope here. Sheesh, this one's going to be long. But it's good, though. It's good, though, right? I mean, come on. This stuff is long, but, it's whatever. It gives you more to listen to whenever you're on a drive or something, so. The other cope to it is, well, but I don't want to get too big. First of all, what would you rather be? Too fucking fat? Too fucking skinny? Second of all, according to who and or what is too big even a thing? Third of all, what you're picturing as too big is fucking on-stage bodybuilders that are 300 pounds. That's not possible without PEDs, performance-enhancing drugs. But of course, people will obfuscate all of a sudden, they're very conscious of that physique. They're very conscious of that. So much so that they're like, well, immediately, reflexively, well, but I don't want to get too big, and they're picturing that. They're abusing that as an excuse to not work out at all. Of course, right? Well, I don't want to get too big. That's putting the cart a little bit too far ahead of the horse. Well, I don't want to get too big. It's like, dude, you're such a fucking excuse cope fucking pussy. I don't want to get too big. Now, where does this idea come from of too big? And that is that, well, girls say there's such a thing as too big. Really? We're going to hinge every fucking thing we do, think, and say on whether or not women approve of it? Seriously? You want to be such an alpha male, or you want to be a tough guy or whatever, the first thing you have to do is stop subordinating your life and yourself and your interests to the interests of fucking women. And that just reflects that people don't understand that fitness and health and wellness and all of this is stuff to value and to care about and to respect and to love in and of itself, not just because it might get you some more fucking pussy. You need to love this stuff in and of itself because it is a part of you, and you need to love yourself. I hate saying that because that's gay, but that's what this is. This is about self-respect, and, I'll just leave it at self-respect so I don't say fucking love too much, like a homo. This stuff isn't about fucking women. So, now, even if it were, that's not even fucking true, okay? And this is an example of why you can't take women, what they say, seriously with this type of thing, because they just fucking make shit up. Or that what they say is their copes. And I have this study here. It's in the article version of this on Twitter, by the way. So check that out. I got to make sure my audience bounces back and forth. But there was this study. I knew I could find this somewhere. There's brawny, built, toned, slender, typical, chubby. Okay. So what was profound is that the brawny, the super brawny guy versus the built and toned guy, that is not unattractive comparatively per se. What that actually is just slightly less attractive. And so, as a matter of fact, they rated it. The toned guy got 6.87, the built guy got 6.97, and then the brawny guy got 6.37. And comparatively, the chubby guy got 2.95, typical got 4.28, slender got 5.42. So even the next one down, slender 5.42, is more distant from the top two most attractive body types significantly, almost a point closer. So this is really just like a crock of shit. What's more is, from this study, you could even argue that it's actually the most attractive type, because there were also a couple of traits that were attributed based on the body type. So overall sexual desirability is the one that I just talked about. There's physical dominance, commitment, and volatility. For physical dominance, the brawny guy was rated 8.01. The built guy was rated 7.18. The toned guy was rated 5.70. So there's a significant drop off there on the toned guy. So really, on physical dominance, you got to be pretty big, right? And you could argue that if you're highest in physical dominance, physical dominance is an attractive quality. So if you're the highest ranked in there, but not the highest ranked in sexual desirability, there's you're still quite a front runner. Then in commitment, the brawny guy was rated as the lowest in commitment, 4.02, versus the chubby guy was 5.90. So that's just an example of whether or not you have options, that whole debate. And not that I hate talking about it that way. But now here's the question, for them to say that the brawny guy is the least likely to be committed is for them to presume that the brawny guy has the most options. You only have the most options in mate selection if you are the most attractive. Okay, so do you understand that? Do you understand that this whole thing is a cope right then and there? So why might women say that this is like unattractive? Anyway, well, they say it because they can't differentiate between feeling threatened and their ego feeling threatened. So because this guy is the most attractive and he has the most options, he gets more attention than she does. He is kind of like, more capable of leaving than she is. And that's threatening to the ego. Here, we'll have our visitor here. That's more threatening to the ego. Now, ego can manifest as hurt feelings, but hurt feelings is not the same thing as being hurt. So what they figure is, because they can't differentiate between the two, they read him as a threat, which is antithetical to protective. So they think that it's unattractive, but it's not, because they are conflating ego hurt versus actual hurt. And they also just say this to just say things to subordinate. It's much safer to have a guy that's like moderately attractive, but not threateningly so, So, all right, let's see. We talked about. So really, you got to chill with this bullshit trying to be mediocre. Mediocrity breeds apathy. All right. Okay, already talked about that part. All right. So then our classical mechanism here, pacifying the lizard brain. We're almost done. Hopefully another like 10, 15 minutes. So now you might think, you might think, well, this is certainly getting blown up to be obviously false. And once you really think about it, yeah, it's like immediately false and bullshit, right? But I'm struggling, bro. Now, so getting back to that question I posed earlier of why might people insist on this anyway, despite it being obviously false, is because it pacifies the lizard brain. People don't want it to be false, and they're too stupid to think that it's false. They're too stupid to think that it's false insofar as they take this and they run with it and they use it to excuse indulgence. This idea of fitness is 80% diet and 20% training. Well, that just means I have to make sure I eat enough. I have to make sure I eat enough because my training. I have to make sure I rest, and I have to make sure that rest is a vital part of recovery. And they're really eager to do that. They're so eager to believe anything that might possibly lead them to excused indulgence. And because this presents another version of, yes, so I could be indulgent and then still not work out and look exactly super fit. Yes. So people are so eager. Now, some people might potentially pick up that it is false too. And they just simply just blind themselves to it by manufacturing all of these excuses and copes that go with it. All right, so now you might think it's all wrapped up in a nice little bow and it's all cute and ready to go. This package is ready to be sent. I have it all wrapped up and all excused and all bullshit and all that, but something goes wrong where people will still feel guilty operating this 80-20 sentiment. They'll still feel guilty because the truth and its consequences exist, irrespective of whether or not you acknowledge them or know that they're there and everything. So what happens is deep down, we all know that this is a crock of shit. And our super ego starts to manufacture guilt on us. We know we're not doing the right thing. We know we're just coming up with excuses and bullshitting. And so we have to alleviate that, but it's so good. It's so plausible and it so makes sense. It's so good. It's too good to be true, but we have to make it true anyway. So people instead elect to alleviate the guilt. And this is facilitated a couple of ways. So, firstly, the mechanism here to alleviate the guilt imposed on the superego is to trick yourself into feeling like or believing that you are living aligned with the superego. So this is where, firstly, they dress this up in the tough guy tone and the brevity and the cool guy and the pithy way of saying it. And the way that this goes is they say it all tough. They feel good when they say it all tough. They get praised and admired by everybody around them, which further bolsters the feeling of them being tough. And it specifically bolsters the feeling of it being believable that it's working. So in other words, well, if I'm getting praise from other people about how, fit I am and everything, even though they're just falling for, excuse me, I'm struggling here. Even though they're just falling for the brevity of it and everything, and they have no clue what fitness means. If they just see you just kind of not obese, they're going to believe whatever the fuck you're saying with this. So people hijack that, take advantage of it by doing this in front of people, and then they get all sorts of praise and approval from those people, which then bolsters the idea that what they're doing is correct and true. See, look, I am fit. People think I'm fit, so I must be fit. They wouldn't be thinking that if I wasn't fit. And since the act is believable and everything, you know what? I am tough. Everyone's saying I'm tough and I'm cool and all of that. So then I must be tough. So we have that problem there, once again, of feeling is not the same thing as being. Feeling tough is not the same thing as being tough. So people manufacture this feeling. And sometimes that feeling is an end in and of itself, right? So we've talked about how people just want to feel like they're epic and cool, and rather than being epic and cool. And that feeling is an end in itself insofar as it feels good and they want to be that. And it's, optimized so that they got to dodge any of the effort that comes into it. But this other version of it is manufacturing the feeling to reverse engineer it to conclude that they're disciplined and everything. So, namely, a lot of times whenever there's this fitness stuff and all of that, a lot of times there is a genuine sentiment and a genuine idea of valuing discipline and self-control in and of itself, and especially amongst men, they understand innately that if they want to have power and be masculine and everything, they have to first, if they want to control their surroundings and control the world around them, they're going to have to control themselves first. And that manifests as the most base level battle for this is the battle of the working out, because it is the most direct confrontation with the lizard brain's most basic instinct, which that is to eat and consume more than the energy that's put out so that you could survive. If there's a deficit, you die. If you eat less than you put out, you die. So that's the most basic level instinct, but in the modern day, you're a slave to that. And so a lot of men, their idea going into this is, I want to take control of that, and I don't want that to dictate my behavior. I want me to dictate my behavior, especially because that's not needed for survival. So that's the most direct confrontation. And when you do that and then you work out and all of that, on the other end of that, you do feel tough. You do feel better. You do feel confident. You feel like a man. You feel like you beat it and everything. So what this does is, by fabricating the feeling first, they then reverse engineer it. And they say, well, okay, because I feel tough and disciplined and everything, that must mean I'm being tough and disciplined and everything. Specifically, that must mean I'm aligning myself with the superego, right? That's how you align yourself with your ideal, the superego telling you to do that. That is what that battle is the superego versus the id. So if I feel tough and everyone's saying I'm tough, I must be tough. And if I'm and if I am tough, then that means I am working out and I am being disciplined and everything. That's what being tough is. And if I am working out and I'm disciplined and everything, and then I am fit. See, I feel fit, so I can reverse engineer that to say, well, I could only feel fit if I'm disciplined and working out, and all of that. And specifically, it's done in such a way that it has to align with the superego to alleviate the guilt. That's the superego's function, is to assign guilt for not doing this and not actually being fit, not actually doing the behavior to earn that feeling. We get guilty for things like that sometimes too. Getting something without the effort for it. So similarly, it's rationalized by reversing it to justify, to say, well, if I feel this way, it must be because I am disciplined and I am tough and I am working out and I am fit. Okay. So that's the first way that they facilitate this. The second way that they facilitate this is by putting it on the tough guy act and, the ostensibly plausible 80-20. They can sort of cast themselves as being serious about fitness and everything. So, in other words, remember the part where they said that everyone thinks it's one way, everyone thinks it's about working out, and it's not. They're casting themselves as the actually superiorly emotionally intelligent person by going through the pain and the effort and discomfort of being proven wrong or something, and the discomfort of their worldview being changed and their view on this and their opinion of this being changed, and admitting they're wrong, facing the discomfort of that and admitting they're wrong, to then go with what's correct. And that bolsters this superego identification by saying, look, see, I negated the superego. I negated the id, I negated the undisciplined thing and the untough thing of not being able to withstand the discomfort of being proven wrong. I withstood that, and I had the emotional resilience of that, so that must mean I am tough. See, look at how tough and disciplined I am. I care so much about this that I'm willing to give up my preconceived notion and withstand the emotional resilience of previously being wrong. So look, I am tough. I am disciplined. I am the superior one. I'm not like one of these pussies who's, stuck in their own little juvenile world of not being able to admit when they're wrong. But of course, and there's also part of that, they have the emotional resilience to challenge the norm. They're challenging the norm. The norm says training is the majority of it, but they're challenging the norm, and they're doing so in spite of how uncomfortable it is. So that must mean they're disciplined and tough, and that must mean they're doing the right thing. That must mean that they're actually being fit If they're capable of being tough in this way, then what they're doing is the tough thing for fitness too. But of course, none of that is tough, mostly because this is the fucking norm. Nobody argues against this 80-20 thing. Everyone argues for it. So you're not fucking going against the norm. You're not withstanding the discomfort of that. And you're not withstanding the discomfort of your preconceived notions because you didn't even have a preconceived notion in the first place. You're just attaching yourself to this as a cope. So once again, it's a fabrication. The third layer to this is that they carefully make like the working out is for stupid jocks. You know, the stupid, oafish, belligerent, boisterous, you know, freaking stupid ogres that just want to freaking lift weights because they're fucking monkey gorillas and you know, they're so physical, and they're so physical because they're so inferior and unsophisticated and you know, a part of the plebeian class, serfs. You know, we're not like those serfs, you know, who just want to freaking be physical all the time. We're superior, intelligent aristocrats who think about these things more carefully and are more informed on these things such that we actually know that it's about eating. But not like those oafs who just want to freaking prove how alpha male they are. And that dynamic there is casting yourself as some sort of superior. If you are superior to them and they are the inferior, that's another version of identifying with the superegos. They fabricated an identification with the superego by saying, you know, we're here and they're there. And because that's what the superego is. It is the superior version of yourself. It is the moral higher version of yourself. So identifying with that in a roundabout bullshit way is, again, reverse engineered. See, I am just identifying with the superego. I am doing the right thing. So the guilt isn't needed here. And it's also just a projection. This is actual projection to make like they're the ones misbehaving. To make like they're the impulsive, addictive oafs, the simplistic ones. This is what projection actually is, not just the fucking Barnes and Noble psychology shit that people play games with online and are always talking about. So yeah, so they're the real disciplined ones, because only low class plebes are undisciplined, but we're disciplined. And that's a precursor. You know, we have status, and a precursor to status is discipline. And all of that. And if I have discipline, discipline's a precursor to, you know, working out and being fit and eating right and everything. All right. So, last part here. All right. So the other layer to this is that it's based on this false, they think that this is the true austerity because it's based on this false premise that eating is the, you know, god-awful, you know, not eating pleasant foods is the god-awful crime against humanity, agony, humanitarian crisis of our time. By foregoing that, they're the tough ones. They're the cool guys and the tough ones. Whereas, you know, those low-class plebes from earlier, they just, you know, they eat and they eat more. Well, really, everyone winds up eating the same amount. But at least they tell themselves that their eating is low class, or their eating is uncontrolled. Our eating is controlled, and that's so hard to do. And since that's so hard to do, I must be disciplined. I look at me, see superego, I'm behaving, I'm rejecting misbehavior. So since I'm aligning with the superego, guilt is not needed once again. Fabricating the feeling and reverse engineering it. But as a matter of fact, this is like the most powerless version of this type of stuff because, as I mentioned earlier, if food has the kind of power over you to make it that fucking big a deal to forego it, you're not powerful. You don't have this resolved. You're not disciplined. Okay, discipline is not preoccupation with foregoing the wrong thing. True discipline is being preoccupied so much with doing the right thing that you forget to do the wrong thing. That's one of my tweets there. That one quote, okay? So this should not be agonizing. Like, if this is agonizing to you, you're not fucking tough. You're not cool. You're not alpha. If you can't resist your whittle tweet. So, and then just a quick aside here. When this stuff is advertised on TikTok, there's like a sexual mimicry component to it where, especially when it's guys, of course they're cooking in the kitchen with their shirt off. And it's always like this gay TikTok artisanal cooking thing, cozy little edit with the music, and then the cozy little come cook my fitness meal prep Monday with me. It's like, if you're a fucking woman, dude. If you are doing that, that is what women do. You are sexually mimicking women in the hopes that you gain their favor. Look at me. I'm just like you. I'm a woman, so that should mean we should have a little bit more of a rapport. And that's like a foot in the door to gaining access to women sexually. So that's like the sexual mimicry component to it. That's just so off-putting. Identifying, like, behaving like a woman to get woman's, trust, so to speak. I should stop saying so to speak. I got to work on my vernacular a little bit. So, all right. So I'll wrap this up here. We all know what the solution is. I won't make the solution and conclusion part here too long. Fitness is 100% diet, 100% training. How about that? Okay. And it's only 80% training, 80% diet, 20% training. If your 20% training is half-ass fucking bullshit because you're only giving 20% on your training. This is all just an elaborate excuse to excuse indulgence, to fuck off, to be lazy, to keep yourself preoccupied with fucking food, to forever be an amygdala fucking lizard brain, making everything about food and its pleasantries, and then this careful, elaborate psychology of alleviating the guilt by over-identifying with or fabricating identifications with the superego by being tough, by saying things with tough brevity and pithy to, make like everyone else is the low-class plebeian, and to make like, working out is the oafish, stupid idiot thing to do. So that's like a really short, I'm trying to keep this one, shorten this a little bit. So that is that. Now, the solution is you really just have to fucking stop orienting your entire life on the optimization of energy and the optimization of everything insofar as optimizing what you have to put into everything. Just fucking accept that you're going to have to put a lot of energy into everything to get anything. And it's not fucking hard, and it's not painful, and it's not bad. What the fuck else are you going to do? Fuck off? What's that been doing for you? Take all that stuff to its end. Pleasure and all of that. Why don't you just go do heroin if you want to be so pleased all the time? It'll ruin your life. And if you don't want to do that, then that tells you that something deep within you wants more for your life than just that. So you might as well just fucking accept and put up with that it's going to take something out of you. It's going to take energy out of you. It's going to take effort. You don't have anything else to do, and it's not that fucking painful, if at all. 80% diet, 20% training. Dude, how about you just shut the fuck up and actually be serious about going to just go. I don't know how to get this through to people. I mean, it takes a little while, and that's fine. It doesn't always sink in, but try to make it sink in. It's not that fucking painful or uncomfortable to just go do things and to not lay around. It's not that painful or uncomfortable, if at all, to go work out. I don't even want to advertise that it feels good, but it doesn't, it's just moving with effort. The true pain and discomfort is in not being who you want to be and not giving to yourself what you want, and instead trying to come up with every fucking bullshit excuse and every lowering of your standards you can to forego that. Every last little bit of you, every cell in your body is going to gnaw at you to do what you want, and you're not going to be able to change what you want. You want to get a big sexed up physique, you just have to accept that you can either forever want that or go fucking get it. And you're never going to get that without giving something. And you're never going to get that by only giving like a margin. It's just never how anything works. So I guess in a word, the solution, or in a phrase, the solution is get your eyes on the prize. If the prize is the sexed up physique, nothing matters but getting there. And that's the real tough guy thing, is to accept that there are a multitude of things that you're going to have to do, and it's going to take a lot out of you to get there. So that's your eyes on the prize. Okay. All right. I kept it close. An hour and 10 minutes. If you would like coaching on this type of stuff, head on over to my website, marchesemethods.com. We do one-on-one, one-on-two, one-on-three coaching. And in the future, that's going to be therapy, basically. And if you have a bad notion about therapy, don't worry. It's going to be the same structure that I have here, just under the guise of credentialed therapist. And I can take insurance that way and all that. But that'll be a long time from now. Be sure to follow me on x.com/@MarcheseMethods. There's an article version for every video, or almost every video I do, at least everyone henceforth. So if you want to read this, and I'm a little bit more well-spoken reading this time than in my writing this time than I am in my speaking. So if you'd like to read it too, to further sink it in, head on over to X, Marchese Methods. Sheesh, I'm tired. And read those articles. Like and subscribe on YouTube, like and retweet and everything on Twitter. I think that's everything. Don't forget about the space I have on Saturday. If you have a Twitter, you'll see it and you'll be able to jump right in. It's going to be Saturday at noon with me and all my friends. We have quite a few topics there. It kind of just sort of goes, but... And then either me or one of my buddies will screen record and upload it to YouTube, so it'll be a little bit more accessible on YouTube as well. So that's everything. MarcheseMethods.com. For coaching. Thanks for tuning in.